Good evening and welcome to the Monday, September 25th, 2023, 6 p.m. regular joint meeting of the Bell Garden City Council and Successor Agency to the Community Development Commission. The meeting will now come to order at 6:05 p.m. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live online through the city's website as noted on the agenda. If any of the members should have a conflict of interest, please announce any item you're recusing from due to a conflict of interest prior to the item being heard. Tonight's invocation will be given by our Community Development Director, Gus Romo.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council and the public. Lord, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business. Please guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. Amen.
And the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Girl Scout Troop 2543.
Please stand. Please face the flag. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may now be seated.
Thank you. City Clerk, please call roll of the members of the City Council and Successor Agency.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Members of the City Council and Successor Agency, Barsana.
Present.
Councilmember Gomez.
Present.
Councilmember Pulido.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez.
Present.
And Mayor Sanchez.
Present. We will now move to the presentation. City Manager, please introduce the presentations.
Thank you, Mayor. The first presentation we have is for National Community Planning Month proclamation. We have our Community Development Director here and staff as well, so I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
In honor of the Community Planning Month, October 2023, whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, townships, rural areas, and other places, we recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional community and urban planners of the City of Bell Gardens and in the County of Los Angeles, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now there it be resolved that I, Francis de Leon, Mayor of the City of Bell Gardens, along with the Bell Garden City Council, hereby proclaim the month of October 2023 as Community Planning Month in the City of Bell Gardens in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month. And we have a recognition right here. Thank you.
And we're going to present that to our staff so we can go ahead and then if you want to say a few words.
I would. Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. I want to say I'm so grateful for your recognition and grateful to have a wonderful planning staff who gets involved even in things that sometimes are not planning related. So ultimately, they're such a good team to work for. I'd like to recognize our city planner, Mr. Stephen Jones. Our associate planner, Ms. Mona Masayeb. And our newest associate planner, Mr. Adrian Flores. Thank you for this recognition.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, if I may, I just want to say a few words. I want to thank the Community Development Department and the Planning Department, which is all one department, for all the work that you guys do. I've been hearing a lot of feedback from the community in regards of you being out there, present in our community, making observations, doing your job. And it's been a positive experience hearing from residents. I know sometimes we get people complaining. We get a lot of that all around the year. But in this case, I've been hearing a lot of positive things. So thank you. Thank you for being out there and making your presence known to the community in a positive way. I appreciate it.
Any other comments? No, we can get your team to please come up and we're going to present you with the certificate. City Manager, can you please present the next presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sanchez. The next item is to recognize National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor. Thank you.
The City of Bell Gardens would like to give a proclamation in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, whereas 1 in 8 women in the United States will be diagnosed with breast cancer in her lifetime. And whereas in 2023, in the US alone, an estimated 297,790 will be diagnosed with invasive breast cancer. This includes new cases of primary breast cancer, but not limited to just breast cancer. Has estimated 55,720 new cases will be diagnosed. Whereas breast cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer among American women. Whereas we applaud the advocates, medical professionals, researchers, and caregivers who dedicated their lives to making progress towards cures. And whereas even with all the new and effective treatments, we must continue to stand along those stricken with this and survivors of breast cancer in a united effort to seek out better and more effective treatments or ultimately a cure for many forms of breast cancer. Now, therefore, it be resolved that I, Francis Stadion Sanchez, Mayor of the City of Bell Gardens, with the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month and encourage all residents of Bell Gardens to increase awareness by having annual detection practices and pay tribute to those who have lost their lives to this disease. Proclaim this day, the 25th day of September of 2023. Can you introduce the next presentation, City Manager?
Thanks again, Mayor Sanchez. The next one is to recognize October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. With that, I will turn it back over to, I believe, Councilmember Barcena has the proclamation. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you, City Manager. And I do have this proclamation here. I always like to show it. Just a beautiful recognition proclamation on Domestic Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. And we do have one of our local nonprofit organizations here, Spirit, who we really appreciate, that has been doing a lot of work on raising awareness about domestic violence. Whereas Domestic Violence Month was launched nationwide in October 1987 as a way to connect and unite individuals and organizations working on domestic violence issues while raising awareness for those issues. And whereas while our nation has made significant progress in addressing domestic violence by responding to the stories and leadership of courageous survivors, as well as through advocacy and legislative action, domestic violence nonetheless remains all too common in America. And whereas millions of women and men are impacted by some form of intimate partner abuse each year, and whereas domestic violence can cause injury, fear, post-traumatic stress disorder, housing insecurity, missed school or work, and other devastating consequences, and whereas historically, underserved populations, including LGBTQI+ survivors, persons with disabilities, immigrants, racial and ethnic minorities, and American Indians, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians face some of the highest rates of domestic and sexual violence, along with additional barriers to safety and support. And whereas, as we continue the essential work of ending domestic violence, we can all help build a culture where abuse is not tolerated and where survivors are heard, supported, and protected. And whereas we can express our gratitude to the remarkable people and organizations that offer care and critical services to survivors of domestic violence, and we must remain committed to building a better world where all people can feel safe and respected and live free from abuse. Now, therefore, be it resolved that our Mayor, Francis de Leon Sanchez, does hereby proclaim October 2023 as National Domestic Violence Awareness and Prevention Month, and encourage residents of Bell Gardens to speak out against domestic violence and support efforts to educate all people about healthy relationships centered on respect, support victims and survivors in your own families and networks, and support the efforts of victim advocates, service and healthcare providers, and the legal system, as well as the leadership of survivors in working to end domestic violence. Proclaimed this 25th day of September 2023, and it is signed by our Mayor, Francis De Leon. Now, if I may please ask the Spirit representatives that are here today if they like to share something to come up, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for inviting us and thank Spirit Family Services as you know the organization that received this proclamation is beautiful. You know, the work is we need a lot of work to be done in the community, and I wanted to take the opportunity to invite you all because we're gonna celebrate again and have the walk again here in the month of October, and I wanted to invite you all to be there with us in the community, and it's gonna be on October 27 again. You know, we inviting the community and all of you to be with us. I think it's an important month for our families, you know, to acknowledge and also to be aware of the needs that we have with domestic violence. We feel very honored to be here today. Thank you.
I second that. Thank you so much for the honor and for the city council for really acknowledging the huge need and needing to bring awareness to domestic violence, especially in the prevention component. So we thank you, and that's why we're here in the community, just to make sure that all people that live here are aware of all the services that are available that can help really save lives. So thank you.
Thank you once again, and I'm going to say it in Spanish just for the audience who's here. Para las personas que gustan acompañarnos a la marcha que vamos a tener en el 27 de octubre, va a ser en un viernes. Ya estarán pendientes para los más detalles. Esa marcha es nada más para dar es una forma de demostrar a las personas víctimas o las personas que son sobrevivientes que hay recursos aquí en la comunidad. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. And you can count me in for that march. I will be there. And of course, there might be some comments from my colleagues, but before you guys go back, I would like to take a picture with everyone up here. But
I just want to thank Spirit. I know that you're a big component in our community, and the fact that you're here in Bell Gardens able to help not only the residents, but surrounding communities as well. I really appreciate it. So thank you for all the work that you do.
I'll go ahead and chime in here as well and echo the comments of my colleagues. You know, I attended the march last year, really great program. And in all honesty, I think the work that you all do here in our community, it's such a blessing, because when we talk about resources, when we talk about issues that our community really struggles with and seeks help, this is one of the avenues. This is your organization is one of those hopes, right? To give guidance to our community, to give guidance to our people. So I'm extremely appreciative of all the work that you do. And as far as our city, always expect a partnership and support. So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
And yes, I also want to express my gratitude for you, for your organization, for the things that you do for people who are in need of your services. You know, many years ago, and even in the best families, right, things happen. And I know that in my family, there were times when people needed help, such as the services that you provide. And thank God for that you're there, right? So thank you. And I will also be at your walk on the 27th. So thank you for that.
We will now move to public participation for items not listed on the agenda. Public participation is now open. Please make your, city clerk, please announce the instructions for public participation.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on items listed on the City Council Successor Agency Joint Agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the member of the City Council and Successor Agency. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone, and when instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through Zoom may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature and select the unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from the members of the public that are physically present in the council chamber. And for the record, we did only receive 1 written comment. And I think they're also going to participate virtually to express the communication. Thank you.
Madam City Clerk, just for the record, it's non-agenda, correct?
That's correct, non-agenda.
Bruce A. Crow.
All right, good evening. A little disappointing, looking at all the AI generated prayers and declarations. A little more sincerity, a little more humanity would be greatly appreciated. Domestic violence, an important issue. And I mean, I've been accused of not being much of a feminist or anything like that, but I don't think guys should be, as we used to say, beating on the old lady. I think that's totally unacceptable. I think a guy that does that is repulsive. And I just think it's a bad thing. I do draw the line there. I also draw the line at smuggling of these young girls in through the open border. And I don't hear a word from any of you liberal Democrats complaining about people coming through the border illegally and smuggling these girls in here and selling them into slavery, sex slavery, other forms of quote slavery. I don't hear a word from any of the feminists about that. Why not? Because you are liberal Democrats. You are on the plantation. You are the Paco and the Conchita and the Uncle Tom and the Mammy. You will not veer and think for yourself. And this is a sad show. I also am opposed, not being much of a feminist, but I don't think these men in high school, boys in high school, and men in collegiate sports should be allowed to participate against girls. I think that's abuse. I think that is domestic violence. I think it's criminal. But again, like over in Downey, we had the Women's Empowerment Conference about strong women, but not a one of them mentions anything about these guys beating up on girls in sports. And none of you complain about it either. None of you do, because you dare not step out of line, because you are soulless, heartless, and just following orders. And it's a sad show. And I think you need to turn it around, look in your heart, and have some common sense, reasonableness, and let God direct you a little bit more in understanding your role as a man and a husband and a father. And you don't beat on women. You let women go through the door first. You open the car door for them. And that's a good thing. It's not toxic masculinity as you would label it. We need toxic masculinity, but those are the guys that will open the door and they won't beat on the old lady. Thank you.
The next comment card that was submitted does not have a name.
Hi, my name is Rogelio Rodriguez. I live at 649 Clara Street, if you don't know my address. I don't like to point things to somebody, but I don't feel good when somebody live in another city come to represent our community. I think this person, he want to prove us or prove to the community, he live in this community, have to give some proofs because we don't have no proof at all. This lady live right here, Mr. Maria Pulido. And you city council tolerate that violation of the law. That means I can do the same thing. If they don't apply to me, they don't apply to nobody. Pretty soon, some of you guys probably they're gonna move to another city. And let me excuse what the word say, they come to make a shit if they don't clean it up. Because they don't care, because they live in another city. Every time we come here, we have to tell this lady to move, to go to Downey where she lives. Because she don't live here. Thank you.
Is there any virtual comments? Zoom?
Yes, we do have one. Zoom ID Ruben Hoyos, if you would please select the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Thank you. You may proceed. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ruben. I'm with a William C. Velasquez Institute, and we would like to promote our event called Ponte las Pilas this Saturday. We'd like to thank the City of Bell Gardens for co-sponsoring this event. It's going to take place on 9:30 this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You guys should have flyers for this. And yes, it's going to be a fun event. There's activities for kids. There's going to be food trucks, free T-shirts, and there's going to be other prizes as well. There also anyone who test drives an electric vehicle or rides in an electric vehicle will get a free food coupon and will receive a free meal voucher to go eat at one of the food trucks. En español, primeramente, va a haber un evento se llama Ponte las Pilas Sila. Es para que haya concientización para el medio ambiente. Es una prueba de conducir un carro eléctrico. Y cuando uno realiza una prueba de manejo o si monta en un carro eléctrico, van a recibir un cupón de comida. Quiero agradecer a la ciudad de Bell Gardens para patrocinar este evento. Esto se va a llevar a cabo en el parque de Cudahy. Cudahy Park's the event from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And thank you very much for letting me introduce this. And please check out the flyers that you guys have, that I passed, that are available. And yeah, thank you so much, City Bell Gardens.
Thank you. That was the last speaker.
If there's no objection by the members, I will now close public participation. Public participation is now open for items listed on the City Council Successor Agent Joint Agenda. City Clerk, please announce the instructions for public participation.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on items listed on the agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. And when instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through Zoom may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature and select unmute or microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from the members of the public that are physically present in the council chamber. And we did not receive any written communication.
Bruce A. Crow.
Again, as the words of Pauly Shore, I'm back. Okay, number 7 on your chart. Discussion of ordinance number 938, or the exceptions to required parking. It proposes standards for compact, electric vehicles, and bicycles. So this is what community development is looking for, to have you only ride in these types of vehicles or a bicycle. That's what's going to be allowed for you to do. Not your own car, and your freedom to move around as you see fit or to buy whatever you want. Ain't nothing better than a nice Dodge Charger RT or something like that with some muscle, you know, a good old American car. That's what America's all about. You're not to ride around a bicycle. That's communist China, for crying out loud. Come on, or one of them junk electric vehicles they've got in their graveyards. This thing, if implemented, claims to decrease development costs. Is there a study that's been presented to you that proves that point, that you should vote in the affirmative on it? Where are the numbers? This is just an assertion. It also claims to be reducing the oversupply of automobile parking. Who says it's oversupply? Who are you to decide if there's an oversupply? Show your data. Prove to us why it's an oversupply. Maybe it's just about right. It also claims they're going to transition away from an over-reliance on automobiles. Who says you're over-reliant on a car? I like to have a car. I'd rather have a car than a bicycle. You get around a lot better. You have more freedom, mobility. You can progress. It will improve the economy and air quality. What numbers do you have that proves that point? What tests have you done that prove that point? None. The state has no evidence of that. It's like being in 15th century Europe as an explorer, and you're riding in a ship, and they tell you you can't go out past so far because the earth is flat and you're going to fall off the edge. Well, what evidence was there to prove that point? But they all believed it. But you're all going to believe everything on here, but you have no evidence to prove any of these assertions. Reject this nonsensical climate change lunacy. Thank you.
The second card that was submitted does not have a name.
Otra vez, mi nombre es Rogelio Rodríguez.
The commercial garages that they've done. I'm talking about 2000 back. Since then, nobody cares what's happening. And I think even you all have the same problems because all of you live here in the city, with the exception of Pulido. And regarding commissions, I hope I'm wrong, but what I'm seeing on that list, I hope no family members of any representative here, no one should have a relative working here in the city. And I believe that several people have relatives working here in the city, and that is not allowed according to the law. But since you are the ones making the laws here, it's not surprising that you're doing this. But you really do need to do something about parking because it's a big problem.
If there's no objections by the members, I will now close public participation. City Manager, will you please give your report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Before I list a couple of the events that we just had and a few that are coming up, just want to make a mention. Sometimes there's an interesting suite of items on the consent calendar, and I think this is one of those before the council moves on to the discussion items. To just point out We've got several grants here that help residents directly. One of them is to ultimately receive better internet connectivity at an affordable cost through federal program. Another one is a rental assistance program. The third one is to assist with residents that are applying or need to reapply for Medi-Cal. And the last one is funding that provides for swimming lessons. And even though the aquatic centers shut down while we're working on building a new one, the cities continue to offer aquatics programs in the summertime, initially through Bell Gardens High School and currently through the city of Montebello and a park that they have. Just want to make a point of that. I think those are great items, and again, they help residents directly. Also want to thank residents, visitors, staff, council members, vendors, participants from the consulate for the Fiestas Patrias event that was held on September 16th. Also want to mention, just last week we had our monthly rent stabilization workshops for tenants and for property owners. So we'll continue doing those on a monthly basis. Also reach out if you have a rent stabilization or rental issue, you can contact our community development department. This Friday, September 29th, this is something that we have out on our calendar, but for residents or anybody that's listening, there is a contest. It closes this Friday, but there's still time. It's a contest to rename the West Santa Ana Branch Transit Corridor. There's $100 prize for the successful winner, and the website is renamewsab.com, or you can go to Bell Gardens calendar, just Google search that, click on September 29th, and that'll get you going as well too. So that's an important project from a naming perspective and to make it more relevant to the region. Also want to mention our plan was to close our current rental assistance program on September 15th, but we still do have some funding available. So we'll be updating some information that's out there on the website. But in the meantime, we do have additional resources available for rental assistance program if you contact our community family services office, or if you go to our website, go to September 15th on our calendar, and that'll give you more contact information as well. That'll provide up to $1,500 for any back rent that's due for the months of August or September. The last thing I want to mention is this Saturday at 8 a.m. we have our annual 5K run walk, kids run and art expo at 8 a.m. So if you're into running or walking, this is a great event. There are a lot of visitors from outside of Bell Gardens that like to run competitively in these events. And if you're not into that and you just want to watch people run, the art expo portion is really good. I think last year we had about 15 art vendors. We have more this year, according to our Recreation Community Services Director, and a lot of interesting art that was on display and for sale at the event last year as well. So you can go to just Google search Bell Gardens calendar, click on this Saturday, and you'll see how you can sign up. And if you don't want to formally run or anything, you can still please show up. It's a great event. There's a lot of people. It's a lot of high energy and good vibes. Thank you, Mayor.
We will now move to consent calendar. Does any member of the council, successor agency wish to pull an item for separate discussion? Hearing none, I will now call for a motion to approve item numbers 1 through 12 of the consent calendar. May I have a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Barcena. May I get a second?
I'll second.
Second by Gomez. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Members of the council and successor agency, Barcena,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez.
Yes.
And Mayor Sanchez.
Yes. City Manager, will you please announce discussion item 13?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Sanchez. This item is the local commission's appointment list. It's staff's recommendation that the council review the appointment list. And by motion, this would be the time to remove commissioners and or make appointments to posted vacancies. Thank you, Mayor.
Does any member of the council wish to make any changes at this time? I'm hearing none, so I'll move on to the next item. City Manager, will you please announce discussion item 14?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Sanchez. This item came to the council at the last meeting. We had a presentation from the recommended vendor from an RFP process for a city mobile app. That vendor was GoGov. We had not had a meeting of the city app ad hoc prior to the last meeting. There were still some questions, good questions regarding compatibility with our current website, questions about language translation, about some other technical kind of back office issues as well. So we've had a meeting with the ad hoc. We've worked through some of those issues through conversations that our staff have had with the prospective vendors and also with the ad hoc. And so with that, I will turn it over to our assistant to the city manager, Hyla Soto, to provide an update to the council. Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. The item again, thank you, Mike, for the presentation. So we'll just briefly go over the mobile app staff report. And let's see. So just quick background information. So the presentation was made by both staff and GoGov at the last council meeting on September 11th. And the motion was made to continue the item, to table the item until the next regular meeting. There was an ad hoc meeting, and the ad hoc asked staff to see if there's any provider that can provide both an app and the website that's fully integrated all in one, meaning same software and being hosted on the same server. The GoGov does not provide any website services. They only provide mobile app services, and Granicus is our current website developer. And the other proposal from Civic Plus, they also do provide website and apps just like Granicus. Staff, after speaking to both vendors, staff determined that the Granicus and Civic Plus acquired third-party apps companies recently in the past few years. And so then the apps themselves were not fully developed in concert with the website products that Granicus and Civic Plus provide. And in essence, the app products offered by those companies are the same as other third-party apps such as GoGov. And I'll just quickly go over some of the slides that were presented at the last council meeting. So community engagement tools again come in different guises with different range. And the city currently has a tool belt of high-tech technology that it uses to communicate with the community, including the city website, belgardens.org, through emails, through telephone, as well as social media, Instagram, Threads, X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as Facebook and YouTube. And including some people might be watching us right now via Facebook and YouTube. And we're streaming live in 3 different languages on each of those platforms: English, Spanish, as well as the bilingual feed. So those are ways to engage the community in the preferred language. Some of the services that some of the constituents might request the city for services include for trash, street repairs, graffiti, and program registration. And again, many local agencies have unified the services requested by constituents with a mobile city app. And just city mobile apps are just a popular form of community engagement as smartphones become more popular. And again, the RFP was released in January and August of this year. And the request was for a cloud-based storage, that the app be available in multiple app stores, including Android and Apple. There will be security and technical updates, as well as cloud-based customer request management. Part of it would include public-facing web portal, as well as an internal-facing administrative dashboard for staff to use. And again, the app would have to be highly customizable to meet the city's needs. And this would allow the public to report issues with descriptions, photos, and map pinpoints. And then we received 3 proposals: GoGov, Civic Plus, and Tatum Games. The cost Staff is still recommending for the city council to proceed with the GoGov recommendation, as they have over 100 California cities and counties as clients currently. And just to quickly, this with this slide, just to talk about redundancy and resiliency. Separate. There's a benefit to have the website and the mobile app as different providers. Should there ever be a service outage by one of those developers or providers, then we're able to still communicate information over to the residents. It's probably many of us have encountered when Instagram has gone down. People will typically go onto Twitter to see if Instagram is down. So this is kind of like similar concept where we would just have one of our tools to still be able to deploy information should there be a need. Most of the developer providers are up over 99%, but just for that small amount of time, there might be, we just have that extra sense of being able to communicate directly with the public. And then there's also just gonna be a little bit less of a need for the services to be within the same ecosystem when they're separate providers. And again, the fiscal impact would be with the GoGov request would be $24,180 per year, and the term of the agreement is for 3 years, plus an optional 2 one-year extensions. It is staff recommendation that the city council adopt resolution number 2023-79 and authorize the city manager to execute the professional services agreement with GoGov for the city mobile app, subject to approval by the city attorney. And just to mention with the professional services agreement, there is a termination clause with no cause, meaning we could terminate this contract at any time should there ever be a need for that. So, and this concludes my staff report.
Does the member of the council have any questions or comments? Okay, I make a motion to approve staff's recommendation. May I get a second?
I'll second.
Motion by myself, Sanchez, second by Councilmember Barcena. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And members of the council and successor agency, Barcena,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez.
Yes.
And Mayor Sanchez.
Yes. City Manager, will you please announce discussion item 15?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Sanchez. This item is a follow-up to the sidewalk vending report and update that was provided to the council at the last council meeting. We're bringing forth for the council consideration of a new sidewalk vending ad hoc. And if the council were to approve that resolution to create the sidewalk vending ad hoc, you'd also have to make 2 appointments from the council to that ad hoc as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Does any member of the council have any questions or comments? No? Okay. Does any member of the city council wish to serve on the sidewalk vending ad hoc committee or proceed forward with this?
Actually, I do have a comment. I think that given the recent SB 972 that the board actually had on their agenda item, but then they tabled that until December. That SB 972, I believe, will impact the permitting for vendors in Los Angeles County. So I think it's a good idea to just stay on top of that and see where that goes. So, and that will, I think, help inform us for future decisions on that. So.
Alongside with that, I know that Lena Gonzalez is going to have a roundtable with all of the SELA communities to discuss this very issue. So I think until we're able to acquire more information from the senator and also from the supervisors of LA County, I think that it's not appropriate to move forward with an ad hoc committee for sidewalk vending. But I don't know how you guys feel about that, so.
I think it'd be a great idea, Mayor, to look into the discussion, and I'll be happy to report back after that roundtable discussion with Senator Lena So I will be going to that meeting and bringing something back to report. Thank you.
So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to table this item for the future if needed. Can I get a second?
Go ahead and second.
City Clerk, can you please conduct a roll call vote?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Members of the council and successor agency Barcena,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez, and Mayor Sanchez.
Yes. City Manager, will you please announce discussion item 16?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Sanchez. This next item is also an item that's been brought back from based on direction from the council at the last council meeting to discuss vacant and or abandoned property inventory as it relates in the city of Bell Gardens, and may help the council provide further direction regarding any potential fees for tracking vacant properties and potentially even going so far as to have a voter approved tax measure placed on the ballot that would levy a tax on such property. So our community development director went back with staff and did some research, and he'll present those findings at this time. Thank you, Mayor. Go ahead, Gus.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mayor, members of the City Council. This is a property inventory that was taken since the direction that you gave on September 11th for vacant and or abandoned property, which consists of land and or buildings. And we did this based on the direction that we wanted to get from you on moving forward with the creation of a a vacant property registration ordinance. So looking at the background, it was noted September 11th that like many other cities, Bell Gardens has had challenges with vacant and abandoned property. And so we were asked to go ahead and bring back an ordinance. I'm sorry, not an ordinance, an inventory. And in this inventory, we noted properties that were vacant, whether the buildings themselves were entirely vacant or the land itself was vacant. Because a lot of times these properties create an eyesore. With the registration program, you have the ability to monitor and cite and really keep owners accountable for their properties. So many counties and cities, as we've indicated, have adopted these programs. There are some cities that have gone further and have also done a ballot measure, which is what we presented last time. So the two options are the fee registration program, which is creating an ordinance to monitor and have people register their properties. Second is a ballot tax measure that would go out to the voters, and that would adopt a fee, I would say a tax, a set tax. The fee registration itself would be limited to whatever the cost study says. In other words, the cost of doing services. The ballot tax measure, on the other hand, would be an amount that the voters would adopt. And typically, our experience has been that that would be a much higher fee than the registration. So in looking at the registration, the ordinance would collect fees and help with code enforcement, and again, leading property owners to make those improvements. The vacancy tax, we've seen two cities, the city of Oakland, adopt a measure, and their property tax annually was $3,000 to $6,000 per property. It's known as Measure W. City of San Francisco adopted a similar proposition called the empty homes tax. That was only for vacant residential property. In looking at the inventory, we found a total of 10 properties. Now, keep in mind, we did not look at vacant lease spaces or properties that are partially vacant. We looked at properties that are entirely vacant. So the direction is to identify vacant buildings. So for example, if there is a parcel that has been developed in two phases, phase one was built, second phase was never built. So part of that property is vacant and remains vacant. It's up to the council to tell us, do you want to include that in the inventory? Right now, we're only including completely vacant property. Same thing with lease spaces. Do you want us to include properties that have maybe a vacancy rate on there, maybe a certain amount? If they're over 50% and those lease spaces have been left vacant, a lot of times you find that property owners will do that for tax purposes, or perhaps they just don't want those spaces leased at the time to be used for other uses. And unfortunately, I can't say what those uses are, but we found that sometimes there are unpermitted uses within these spaces, and that's why they're left vacant. So that's another direction from the council to see if you want to include those type of lease spaces within this inventory. So again, the problem is that the vacant sites hold the potential for key development, including housing production and continued economic growth. The solution that we are offering is to adopt a registration program to be able to keep those property owners accountable. And as an option, also go forward and do a tax ballot that would provide higher fees for those property owners. Tonight, we're asking you to receive this and file this report, or you can give us direction to move forward with an ordinance or other direction. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Does any member of the council have any questions or comments?
Thank you so much for that presentation, Director. Great information. I'm glad to see that this item was brought back. I did get a chance to see the staff report, and I was a little bit thrown off because I believe that in the last meeting, I know we identified there was a ballpark number between 50 to 100 or such that was mentioned. Now I understand that those were considered vacant, particularly vacant spaces within the parcel itself. I think it'd be important for us to look at the complete list that includes that as well. Because at the moment, there was only, I think, 10 lots identified, correct? So what I would say is, and if it's comfortable with the council, I don't know if anybody else has any comments on this item before. I'll go ahead and give direction. I'd like to provide direction to staff to bring this item back with a complete list of inventory of all properties / vacant lots in the city limits that include vacant lease spaces or partially vacant lease spaces, particularly about 5,000 feet or so, square feet, and also identify how the time frame, how long has that been undeveloped. Thank you. And also if you guys can if you can bring it back by the next meeting. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions or comments?
Is that enough time for the next meeting for you guys to bring it in? Just want to make sure that staff has adequate time. If
we do have monthly reports that we keep for vacant lease spaces, I believe so, sir.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
I think I just saw the planners in the back and they're like, oh no. Thank you.
So can I get a motion to give further direction to bring back the report with additional information on the lease spaces? And then can you remind me what the two other things were, please?
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to bring this item back with a complete list / inventory of all vacant properties, vacant lots within the city limits, which was already brought to us, which was those 10, but also now with a refurbished list that includes vacant lease spaces / partially vacant, particularly over 5,000 square feet or such, and then also identify the time frame that parcel has been underdeveloped. Thank you.
Now go ahead and second that motion. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Thank you. Members of the council and successor agency, Barcena,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez, and Mayor Sanchez.
Yes. City Manager, will you please announce discussion item 17?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Sanchez. This item is a rent stabilization ordinance cost of services study. So this is a follow-up item to the rent stabilization and tenant protections ordinance that was adopted by the council in 2022. Part of that ordinance requires that there be a rental registry, that there be a fee to provide for the rental registry to be tracked with staffing, with software to ensure that the property owners are in compliance with this registry. So staff has hired a contractor to conduct this study. What we're really looking for is ultimately, not to take the wind out of the sails of the presentation, really 2 to 3 options. One would be a staffing option that identifies the fee. It's a little over $100 a year. That's a minimum staffing level. Another staffing level that's, I think, about 15 or 20% higher than that. That would be a best practices staffing level. And then a third option would be if the council were interested in creating a rent board. Before I turn it over, I'll just say the staff's recommendation would be that if either of the two first items were approved, one of the two fees, either with the base level staffing and the fee associated, or the enhanced best practices staff level, that the recommendation from staff is to not create the rent board at this time, to allow this process to coalesce and for us to gather all this data. And with that, I will turn it over to our Community Development Director, Gus Romo.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mayor and members of the City Council, this has been long coming. As you understand, our ordinance, our rent stabilization and tenant eviction ordinance became effective on October 12th of last year, after the council had taken action on the rent stabilization ordinance in September. We do have the rental registry fee coming up on November 1st. Actually, I should say, starting in October, we'd like to start implementing it, but we do need to make changes by adopting a fee resolution if you do decide to move forward with this. So tonight, we're asking you to take a look at this cost study. We have our consultant, Mr. Chu Tai, here with revenue and cost specialists. They've done several of these, including for the city of Santa Ana. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Tai to go over that study, what it says, a summary of it, and also identify, as our city manager was indicating, the options that are being presented to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. My name is Chu Tai. I represent RCS. We've been doing fee studies since 1980, so about 43 years worth, and done hundreds of studies. Last couple of fee rental registry fee was for the city of Santa Ana, as Mr. Romo mentioned, as well as the city of Beverly Hills. I have a brief presentation for you. So a little bit about the background. You know this stuff already. The rental stabilization, rent eviction protection ordinance was adopted on September 12, 2022, and became effective on October 12, 2022. The ordinance requires rental registry for all landlords to register the rental units, update the rental unit information, update tenancy information, submit notice, pay the city's rental registry fee. Like Gus mentioned, on or before September 30th, 2023, all landlords which with rental units are subject to the ordinance are required to pay a registration fee established by the city council. So the registration fee will fund the cost to implement, administer, monitor, support, enhance the provisions of the ordinance. The fee shall be determined by the city council and added to the miscellaneous fee schedules like all other fees in the city. The city contracted with RCS to conduct the study. So part of our research was to interview with other agencies that have it. So RCS and Bell Gardens staff held a series of interviews with both new and mature programs to better understand rent stabilization operations, requirements, and rent best practices. Agencies we interviewed were Culver City, Inglewood, Santa Monica. Culver City has about, according to their records, 5,287 units. Santa Ana has 32,450. I couldn't get information for Inglewood. Santa Monica has 381 units. And what we learned about are staffing levels. We looked at the contract services required to run the programs, board and commission roles, if they have any, registry software they use to track it and collect payment, program implementation do's and don'ts, and overall advice on rent stabilization. I think it was very productive for Bell Garden staff as well as us to kind of learn and have the dialogue about that. RCS recommends two alternative models for Bell Gardens. The first one is the best practice, where the city is using 4.1 FTE. The projected budget for that is $1 million. And if you break it down by the number of units, it comes out to be $156. The minimum base level staffing is 3.1, This is less than any other agencies we work with. Culver City is probably the closest in terms of size wise, and they have 3.1 as well. So the budget there is 821. Actually, they have 4. Sorry, yeah. So the budget is 821, and that comes out to be 126. Important on the staffing below is the rent stabilization housing specialist. You would need someone to kind of manage the program, coordinate it, and that would be that position. Of course, there's 0.1 of the community development director to directly allocate into here. Code enforcement officer is something that other cities recommend that, when you're establishing the program, to have someone involved there. And administrative assistants and licensed clerk, permit technician, they're really important because when you're talking about 5,000, registering 5,000, 6,000 units, there's going to be a lot of conversations with all landlords and all the tenants about this. So you need a lot of staffing to help with that. When we looked at the budget, again, the bottom line is $1 million for the best practice and $821,000 for the minimum. The main difference here is just the salaries. Again, for 3.1 or 4.1, I want to highlight a little bit down there that some of the contract services we really need is the rental registry software. We interviewed 2 companies, and we know you're looking for a different company out there. And the price range is about $100,000. The lowest one we have is about $70,000, $72,000. So we put that in there. Public outreach is helpful to get the word out, especially the first couple of years. Legal services, there's going to be a lot of discussions about that. And this is typical with other cities we looked at. Hearing officer, you will need to hear for petitions and appeals and issues related to that. And our step policy development, there's going to be a lot of policy that you need help to kind of develop that. I do want to point out down there, there's indirect administrative costs. So when we do fee study, we look at the full cost of it. And what you don't see here is the general IT support, payroll support, accounts payable, HR, city manager, city council. Those are all indirect costs. And in our model, we want to capture the full cost of that. Otherwise, the general fund will be subsidizing this program. So we put in about 20% over administrative costs or indirect costs, and that's typical based on our study. So that's where we got the 170,000 on the best practice. For the minimum base, we lowered it down to just $75,000. So it's less than 20% for that. The number of units that we estimated was 6,539. That's our best estimate. We're working with HDL, property tax company, some of the software vendors out there, trying to get what's the best number. And that one is what we have. So required fee again is 156 and 126. And if you look at, we'll talk about the pass-through later on. Comparison, again, Bellflower, Bell Gardens, we have 2 models, 156 for all or 126. Compared to Culver City, we're charging 167 for all units. Inglewood, established fee of 206 for all units or 92 with Section 8 housing tenants. Santa Monica is 198. West Hollywood is 144 for fully covered and $60 per unit with Section 8. So this is a suggested fee again. And I just want to mention your ordinance allows for a monthly pass-through, which is 50%. So you break that down, it becomes $6.50. Pass through to the tenants, renters, if it's the best practice model, or $5.25 allowable monthly pass through for the minimum base model. We did talk about the rent stabilization board. Not all cities have it. The city of Culver City does not have a rent stabilization board. They use internal staffing as well as contracted public hearing officer to utilize for that. Inglewood does have a 5-member appointed by the mayor and approved by city council, 2 landlords, 2 tenants, and 1 city employee. Santa Monica, they're more robust. They actually, those positions are elected by the people at large of Santa Monica. So the consideration will allow appeals and petitions to be decided by rent stabilization board rather than staff or hearing officer. It will require revisions of your current RSTEP ordinance. We estimate the cost be $150,000 additional cost, increasing registry to about $23 per unit. And it will require a lot of initial and ongoing training for board members, staffing, require development of policies, procedures, and standards. So for today, select one of the following options. Again, best practice is $156 per unit. And the budget is $1,020,000. The minimum base staffing level is $126 per unit and a budget of $821. I did put an option in here, rent stabilization board. It increases the fee by $23, $150. Other follow-up items, coming from my finance director background, I do recommend establishing a R-step fund, a separate fund from the general fund to fully recover the program costs. That way you can track it all, relate to next, track all the revenue, track all the expenditures and see how it should fully cover costs of itself. I do recommend a 20% fund balance reserve to allow for annual revenue and expenditure variances. Sometimes you don't collect enough one year or you know, less than expected. Same on the expenditure side. Sometimes you have an expenditure side. So rather than recalculating and readjusting it every year, build up the balance and then adjust it every couple of years so that it just makes the program logistically easier to operate. Consider landlord fees to cover costs for petitions for rent adjustment and petition for capital improvement pass-through. These costs are what landlords would apply for. And from our studies, other cities, the cost could vary between $15,000 and $25,000 in city staffing costs or outside staffing costs. So right now, we don't have enough information. So our recommendation is to kind of let it kind of pass through with all the rental registry units until you have that. Based on historical information, other cities, this would be about 1, 2, or most like 3, or I think between 0 and 4 applicants per year who wants to request a rent adjustment or a fair rent adjustment or a capital improvement pass through. So that's something you might want to consider later on. Update our step fee study in 2 years or when you have more accurate rental unit data and available. So the next step is to adopt the R-step registration fee. Consider a mid-year budget adjustment because we don't have a budget yet. Select contract services and registry software. This would be the community development department to go through the list and find the right vendors to support the program, and placement of city staff according to the proposal. So that's the end of my presentation.
Does any member of the city council have any questions or comments? Good question. Oh,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, fine. We'll do it. All right. The question is, we have 2 options. Obviously, one of them is best practice, which automatically sounds like we're doing the most responsible thing. But given that I'm always trying to get the best deal for our city, I do want to ask, in your opinion, where is the greatest reduction in what you're getting if you go with the second option? What is the most impactful difference in your opinion?
My opinion is you should go with the best practice. When you're starting up the program, there's going to be a lot of questions. You're still developing policies and you need as many qualified people to answer the questions and develop the policies and procedures in place. You could always go backwards a year or 2 later and say, okay, you know, it's working well enough. We don't have that many issues anymore, and you could downsize at that point in time. But to start it off and make it successful, you really need this. And this is a really unique program that's basically, I would call it like live every day, meaning that people move in and out every day and there's issues every day. So you don't have the time to do it once a year. You have to have people there to help make the program effective. And it's better to have them up front than you know, like start up and say, and then, okay, we need more bodies to do this and try to get them in afterwards.
Thank you.
The other question that I have, if we go with the $156, that's a yearly, right, per unit. So let's say that an owner had multiple properties. So if they had an apartment complex, that would be considered one unit, or would it be per apartment complex?
Yeah, I would say another way is like per lease agreement. So if they have two-story or 2-bedroom units, then it's 3 dwelling units or 3 rental units. So it's not per building, it's per lease agreements.
Okay. And then 50% of that cost can be put on the renter throughout the course of 12 months, correct? Okay, thank you.
Another question here. When you carry over the cost to the tenant, and maybe this question is for everyone here that might know the answer, how does that impact the increase in rent, right? So does that get added to the increase of the rent, or is that separate? Do they allow to coexist?
Yes, definitely these are the type of policy questions that will come up, and there's a lot of it. But in general, these cannot be part of the rent. It's a pass-through that's not calculated part of that. So and we did some preliminary analysis saying, okay, what is the fee versus like the rent control part, like versus how much landlord can increase the rent. And definitely there's a benefit for renters there that, you know, their rent is not going to increase more than $625 per month. Well, I'm not saying it right, but yeah.
I also want to let you know, our city attorney, Norma Tabaras, who worked on this ordinance, is here as well, if you have any questions for legal.
I do have another question, and legal, please stop me if this is not allowed, but looking at a previous item that we're discussing today in regards to the registry of certain properties, with this system, will we be able to use this to register those properties as well, the ones that are not, out on the market for rental?
So the fee study that was prepared was specific for rental properties, so that's separate from the vacant properties. That would be a separate discussion.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify then, the pass-through amount of this fee that goes to the tenant, that's on top of whatever increase the landlord is allowed, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And this is on an annual basis, if that fee has to be paid.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think just to point out from it's in the details of the cost study, but if you break that out on a monthly basis, which I think when people think of rent, I think of it on a monthly basis. The cost split for the base option between the renter and the property owner is $5.25 per month each. And then if you go with the best practices amount, it is $6.50 per month each side of it. It still comes out to the same number. So I'm not trying to minimize it, but I think we look at a lot of this on a monthly basis. So I thought that might help.
Whole philosophy of rent control. Without rent control, I think a landlord, maybe not here, but others, easily increase rent by $100 a month, $200 a month. So you're putting in rent control now, and you're saying it's capped 50% of CPI. So that's definitely less than $200 a month. So $200 per month is like 2,000 rent. That's 10%. So it is, yeah. So that's the whole concept why many cities are getting on board with rent control for their organization.
I understand that there's some properties where the rent control aspect does not apply if the landlord lives in the property, and I think it's like 3 units and 1. Would this fee apply to those properties?
Those properties are exempt, will not have to pay this fee for those units. So if the owner has 10 units and one of them is live in, or a fourplex that they live in, then that 1 unit is exempt.
Keep in mind, though, our ordinance, the way it was adopted, the rental registry fee is waived if you have less than 4 units and you live in one of them. And that was to help the small mom and pop owners. However, all rental units, even single family homes, have to register. So even units that are exempt from the rent stabilization ordinance does not mean that they're exempt from the fee, the registry fee. They would still have to register. Hope I didn't bring more confusion to that.
Thank you so much. I love this discussion that we're all having up here, and I really appreciate you taking the time and presenting to us this cost study. Couple of points that I wanted to jot down from the presentation. 6,539 is the estimated number of units, or I would say like addresses in the city of Bell Gardens that are rental, correct?
That's our best estimate at this point in time.
Okay. It seems that there was two options presented. One of them that was $126, which is minimum practices per se, and then there was $156 or so, which would be the standard, the best practice recommendation. I noticed that when we were talking about Inglewood or Santa Ana, one of the differences that was pointed out was that some of those had homes or rental properties that were under Section 8, and they had perhaps a subsidy component to it. Has that been identified for our city? And do we have an idea of how many, if those Section 8 households would receive a lower payment compared to a regular that's not Section 8?
Yeah, so during my research, I could not find the Section 8 properties yet. But in terms of establishing the fee, it has to be equitable and fair for everyone, regardless of income. So I think what many of those cities are doing is they are using federal funds to help subsidize those costs. So ultimately, we could, when we get more data, like better determination, like how many Section 8 properties there are, then you could establish a fee based on possibly federal funding to help subsidize those payers.
So it seems that for us to identify the Section 8 households, we would need to see the linkage from the federal funds coming in. Usually, what's the time frame looking like between when this step takes into effect as to when we would have a number, general range of how many households wouldn't be affected, and et cetera, of that cost itself?
Yeah, I would say, I'm not sure if I understand correctly, but I'm going to say that it will take about 2 years for you to understand fully how many rental units are qualified under the rental registry program. And then we could look deeper into that, during those 2 years to say how many of those are Section 8 qualified. And then what you could do is you look at in financing, how much federal funds or state funds, or what other funds you have to say, okay, let's say you have 500 units that are Section 8 and you have $500,000. And you could subsidize the fee that way somewhat.
Thank you so much for that. And then finally, I know we're talking about enforcement of all of this, right? I know there was a couple options presented, whether that be through the board or to just have it in-house as staff. It seems, I just want to make sure that I'm getting the number right. If the council were to approach going the direction of a rent board, whether that be appointed or elected, I would assume elected is probably more costly. But at an appointed level, seeing a city like Inglewood, we're looking at about $150,000 more extra, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And then finally, there was eventually, I would assume that we would as the next fiscal year cycle would come in terms of budget items, we would have a direct fund associated just for rent stabilization. And then through that fund, we would be able to also apply and receive grants through the state or through the federal government to support these sort of programs. Yeah, that's what I would assume the trajectory, because I know that there's been a lot of discussion in terms of addressing housing, the COG created a housing trust fund, and perhaps maybe this could be a way for us to help out cities like ours have more money to be in enforcement and to support those folks, the renters and stuff. Thank you so much.
Any additional questions? May I have a motion to approve the best practice of $156?
I'll make a motion to approve the best practice.
I'll second.
Motion made by Barcenas, second made by Chavez. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Yes, thank you. Members of the Council and Successor Agency, Barcena,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulido,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez.
Yes.
And Mayor Sanchez.
No. City Manager, will you please announce discussion item number 18?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Sanchez. This next item is, I think, a fun one. It's regarding an indoor mural artwork. We're looking for approval for the Veterans Park Administration Building hallway. So this is for an indoor mural that would be painted at Veterans Park, subject to an agreement with the Latino Equity Alliance. They've got grant monies to basically create this artwork free of charge for us, other than providing the hallway and some staff support. So you'll have the opportunity to basically select what you like best. So with this, I'll turn it over to our Recreation Community Services Director, Liz Nava. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. O'Kelly. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Let me get my screen going here. All right, are we all able to see this okay? Okay, I have a very brief presentation before you, as the city manager mentioned. Okay, thank you. Just looking for direction from council on mural artwork and to give you a little bit of background on that. Okay, here we go. The Latino Equality Alliance, or as we know them, LEA, hosts the LGBTQ plus and allies youth group here in Bell Gardens at Veterans Park, and have done so for the past couple of years. And LEA recently received a $600,000 grant from an organization called the Elevate Youth Initiative. And part of this grant requires LEA to paint a mural in one of the communities that they are in. And the mural is titled Painting Restorative Justice, Mind Over Matter. And LEA has selected the city of Bell Gardens to receive this mural. And so the mural will be painted at Veterans Park inside the administration building along the corridor, right outside of the game room and the craft room, if you're familiar with that area. Outreach was conducted by LEA to the community within Bell Gardens and within surrounding communities. And they gathered feedback from residents and members of the community on their ideas of what they want the mural to look like. And so I wanted to share with you just some examples of what they collected. As you can see, we have a variety of artists and concepts here. And so basically, the artist that is developing this mural took these concepts, and in the next couple of slides, and also before you, they've developed two concepts for a mural in which we'll be seeking direction from council to give to the artist to move forward with. The renderings that you're going to see in the next couple of slides are 80 to 90% complete. Once council selects a rendering, the artist will make it 100% complete before they paint it on the hallway wall, which we're excited to receive. So this is the first rendering that the artist came up with. This is what we're calling mural option number 1. And again, the artist just took the ideas that they received from the community and put it together in a mural. And then this is mural option number 2. So this mural is fully funded through LEA. There are no impacts to the city's general fund. And it is staff's recommendation that the city council by motion select and approve an art concept for the indoor mural to be painted at Veterans Park Administration Building hallway, subject to agreement from the Latino Equality Alliance that the city will not be held responsible for any damage to the mural, and that the city reserves the right to remove or modify the mural as is deemed necessary. And we have also on the line with us, in case council has any questions about the project or the mural, Angel Elizalde from LEA. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm also available to answer any questions. And I can stop sharing.
Does any member of the council have any questions or comments?
I do have questions, but I was wondering if Angel was gonna do a small presentation before that. No? Oh, okay. My question is, a big part of this project, the reason why I thought it was an interesting project to pursue is not only that obviously it's being funded by the grant, so there's no fiscal impact to the city, but also because it would involve local artists from the city of Bell Gardens. And I just wanted to ask what the involvement has been. And you said it was 50% done, the renderings, or what percentage?
They're about 80 or 90%.
80 or 90% done. Okay. Yeah, my interest will be to see some of our artists' ideas and collaborations in the actual mural itself. And I believe that's the idea. That's what we got from the meetings that we held with the Latino Equality Alliance. But can you elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Yes, and I don't know if Angel is able to jump on, but thank you, Councilman Barcena. Yes, the Latino Equality Alliance worked with a professional artist as well as local artists from the Bell Gardens community to put together the rendering. And so the local artists will have involvement with painting of the mural as well once the time comes to paint the mural. But yes, local Bell Gardens artists were involved in this process.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question. I was looking at the renderings. So what I'm noticing here is basically the only difference is the background, correct? And maybe the font on equality. But other than that, I think there is sort of like a parks background in one of them, and then the other one is the same thing, but without a background. But I just wanted to make sure that that was the only difference because I can't really see anything else on there. Yeah.
I think, yeah, one is more of an elaborate outdoor experience and one is more simplified, yes.
Okay. I mean, I'll just put it out there. I kind of like the one with the trees and the parks, but that's maybe because I'm a parks person. I don't know, maybe somebody on the council is also a parks person.
I do like number one as well, the one that has the park in the background. My question is, are we able to add suggestions for editing currently what the option one is, or is this what they're going to paint?
I know they still have to work minor details out, so I'm happy to take council's suggestions and share them with the artist.
I like the butterfly concept, but I feel like it's a little too cluttered around the word equality. So if we're able to maybe delete a few of those butterflies so that it's not so clumped together, that would be one of my suggestions.
I think it's a protected species, so I don't know if we could do that.
Anybody else, any suggestions?
Thank you so much for that presentation, Director Nava. It's great to see that we're getting a mural and better part, it's free. Quick question. I know that there's been in the past some discussion. I know there are some park improvements along, through the Prop 68 grant for revitalization of our Veterans Park, mostly, all of our parks here, they're just in the process. I'm curious to know, will this mural, if we move forward, be affected at all in terms of the building changes? I know that we haven't really gotten too deep in terms of how it's going to change the administration office right there or the Community Family Service Center, but I know that's in the works. Will this be impacted at all?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Given what was submitted for the Prop 68 grant and the plans, where it's being painted, it should not be impacted with the updates that Prop 68 grant will bring.
Perfect. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that was a part because it's a beautiful work of art, and I could imagine it takes such a amount of time to have that, and I don't have the talent like that. So the last thing I would want is for it to be, developed over on top of it or something like that. Yeah. But I'm glad to hear that luckily this was taken into consideration and it's not going to be affected. other than that, I'm okay with mural option number 1. Thank you.
Any other questions or suggestions?
Well, I do like the idea of maybe us giving a little bit more feedback as a council. Can we just send you an email or something later if we have any other remarks on the mural, and maybe they'll be taken into account, like if we want to remove another butterfly or something. But I mean, other than that, I'll make a motion to go with option number 1.
Before we second, one more quick question. Are we able to see the final draft before it's painted?
Yes, Mayor, we can bring that back to City Council just to present and show you the final concept before the painting is done.
Great, thank you. So go ahead with your motion.
Motion to go with option number 1, and I'll have a comment after the vote. Thank you.
Would you like to make your motion with the request to bring it back, Councilmember Barcena?
Sorry?
Would you like to make the motion to option number 1 and request to bring it back? for
Of
council
course,
approval?
yeah. Bring it back with a report, just to update on the final draft. That would be great. Thank you.
I'll make the second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Barcena, second by Mayor Pro Tem Chavez. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Barcena,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez.
Yes.
And Mayor Sanchez.
Yes. We will now move to member comments, starting off with Councilmember Barcena.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just want to thank the Latino Equality Alliance for bringing forward this opportunity, especially to the executive director, who's also a council member in Huntington Park. Really appreciate the opportunity. It's not going to cost the city any money, so that's always an extra bonus for us. I want to thank staff for finally getting us here with regards to the rent control ordinance, the study that we've been waiting for such a long time. As the city manager expressed, when you break it down into who's going to be paying for what, it's about a $6 figure, which I feel is manageable. And I want to continue to work hard to make sure that our residents have the opportunity to have a decent situation with their housing, right? It's an ongoing struggle across the entire nation. And I think that we have been very progressive in that regard. And I am proud of the entire council that was involved in those decisions. Also, thank you to staff and thank you to the council for supporting the app that we're going to be working on from here on. Thank you to the ad hoc committee, which was primarily me and the mayor. We did lift every rock possible, and we looked at every detail in regards to this proposal to make sure that it was something that was going to work for us. However, I do want to say that it's not just about buying the service and paying for the services and having them rolled out. We have to help with the adoption process, right? Our demographics suggest that we are an underserved community that needs to be supported in adopting these services that they're not familiar with. So I'm looking forward to working on that and helping with campaigning, with promotion of this city app, because it's not just about throwing the money at it. It's also about being civically engaged and carrying our people towards these services, because obviously with the streamlining of our services through the app, it's going to facilitate that. So again, I appreciate all the efforts, and I'm happy to finally see this being implemented. And that'll conclude my comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Gomez.
Just to piggyback on what Councilmember Barcena just talked about, definitely we can build it, but if people don't have the access to the internet, if they don't have Wi-Fi at home, if they don't have that kind of connectivity, then that's a problem. So I'm glad to see that we have a grant for the Affordable Connectivity Program outreach, and I think that that's a good opportunity to fold this promotion of the app within that outreach. So hopefully we can do that.
Councilmember Pulido?
I just want to thank staff for your dedication in improving our city. Thank you so much.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
Thank you so much, everybody, for the meeting. Appreciate the folks that came out. Thank you, staff, for those presentations. It was a pretty loaded agenda, but I'm glad to see that we got through it pretty swiftly. A couple things I do want to share out since our last council meeting. Let me see, I have it in my notes right here. So since our last council meeting, was actually earlier, September 11th, and now September 25th. Can't believe it goes by so quick. I had a La Casa meeting, Los Angeles County Affordable Housing Agency meeting. And in that meeting, we had a presentation from Stay House LA. We touched on similar information in terms of housing and rental assistance and whatnot. And we also had, we had a presentation from Stay House LA, and we also had a presentation from USC Professor Sharma from the USC Gold School. And we were talking about different partnerships that USC has had in terms of really trying to embrace the community surrounding it and addressing evictions that are happening right across the county, across the city of LA particularly, and the different partnerships that they've gone through to really build that relationship with the neighboring communities, right? Partnering up with SAGE, partnering up with Eastside Leads, partnering up with ACE, all community nonprofits, community driven. Similar to how here in our city we've had the Unión de Vecinas really be an outreach and a tool to get information out when it comes to the rent stabilization ordinance and just cause evictions. There was 3 recommendations that were proposed as far as tackling the mass evictions that are happening. One of those being rental assistance, right? So the county and the state, I should say, has in the past explored directly giving rental assistance, rental money essentially to landlords. In the past, we had it here in our city when we had the governor come back in 2021 with the Housing is Key approach. Housing is Key website, I remember that, and that was sort of a model that was used, but it's still not enough, right? We still know that there's a barrier when it comes to really outreaching to those that are most vulnerable. So one of those recommendations was about rental assistance. The second one was about anti-harassment enforcement mechanisms, right? So a lot of times what we see is there are residents, there are renters who perhaps don't know about their rights, right? They don't know exactly how to go about, who do they reach out to, right? If their gas, if their electricity, if they change, their doorknobs gets changed, what are the options? What do they do at those moments, right? So a lot of times what these residents tend to do is they just remove themselves from those situations, right? They'll say, you know what, I don't want any problems. I'll just go and find another home to live in. So that was another topic that we covered. And then finally, tenant protections, which has been a big, huge component for our city with rent stabilization and really addressing just cause evictions, right? So that was a good presentation we had at our the county meeting. That weekend, September 16th, we had the Fiestas Patrias. That was a phenomenal event. It's always a great time spending it with our community. A great turnout. Banda Imperio really knocked it out of the park, just as last year. So thank you so much to everything, our recreation, community services, our public works, everybody that came out to make this event possible. It was a really great attended event, and community always just has a blast. So thank you to Congressman Robert Garcia for having John Peraza attend from his office, and then also thank you to the Supervisor Janice Hahn for coming out and giving the city a scroll on behalf of that. So it was a really, really great seeing the supervisor being here present in our community, and showing her around. I know we had a couple of moments where she got to see some of the art stuff that has been going on here in our city, really BG Arts promoting that, and some of the local artists. I know we had Lucia Veloz present there, who did an amazing presentation, and she actually even gifted one of her paintings to the supervisor. So I'm glad to see that we have that partnership, and she'll remember that. She'll say, hey, you know what, I remember Bell Gardens and that event. So I'm glad to see that we're having that. And then finally, this last week, I was pretty busy. I had a La Leo Institute for emergency preparedness was in Dallas, Texas. We talked about moments of earthquakes and flooding, particularly here in our city. And what do we do, right? In the past, we had just a couple weeks ago or last month, we had a hurricane, right? It was a hurricane, but at the same time, there was an earthquake. And it's like, what do we do in these moments, right? What are the first tasks what directions do we go to? Who do we ask for leadership, essentially, right? It's hard navigating these. So we talked about an EOC room. I know we have our EOC room and we've used it for meetings and such. So having a command center, who's going to be your chief of this, chief of that, fire. I know we don't have our own fire department, but collaborating with the LA County Fire and having them on board. I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways that I got from attending that institute was creating MOUs with local businesses and identifying first priority to give to our residents, right? So if we talk about we need equipment, hard towing equipment in a case where we don't have it, or big equipment that is used to move boulders or trees, you name it. The first folks that I'm thinking about is a Public Works, but if Public Works doesn't have that capacity, we reach out to LGP, right? Do we have an MOU ready to go with LGP equipment rental? Because that's our local business here that provides for a lot of our programs, right? And then finally, do we have an MOU with big chain stores, right? So I'm thinking, obviously we don't have a big chain here, but I'm thinking right next door, Sam's Club, right? All the equipment that we need, whether that be, food, all that kind of sort of stuff. So anyways, I shared that. And then I also attended the League of California Cities in Sacramento. I run out of time. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you once again, to all the residents that attended the Fiestas Patrias. I know that we saw a lot of people dancing, having a really good time. I also want to thank, Robert Garcia for sending his staff member, Johncito, and then Janice Hahn for being here and being able to really interact with our community and really see our residents and just being able to highlight some of our community members, and introduce herself to them. Also, I really happy to say that the app is going to finally be installed. I hope that the residents do take advantage of it. One of the things that I want to see with the app is to make sure that, our residents are reporting non-emergency police issues so that we're able to create that service log and identify hotspots, that we need to pay more attention within our city. And we're only going to be able to do that if the residents are using the app and reporting such incidents. I also want to thank all the staff for all the hard work that they're doing. And definitely we're going to have our 5K and our expo this weekend on Saturday. So I'm hoping to see many of the residents there. Have a good night, everybody. And once again, thank you to all staff. And if there's no objection by the members, I now adjourn the City Council Successor Agency Joint Meeting at 7:51 p.m. Thank you.